I spent a lot of my childhood in these woodlands, and I've always found the natural environment to be the most powerful and intoxicating catalyst for the creative imagination. Around 7 years ago, a friend of mine who was spending some time in Wales discovered a protest site in an ancient woodland, and he invited me to join the people who were living in the trees in handmade tree houses and benders that were built as defences against an invading gas pipeline. And it was there in a tree that I met my wife, Claudia, and we started making artworks together. For us, spending time with this group of vagabonds and artists was fascinating because of the way in which the social group was affected by the natural environment. And in spaces like this that are sort of saturated in the interlocking complexity of natural systems, wild entanglements where there are no doors, I think we can all understand that our social behavior starts to change. We somehow mimic the complexity of natural systems, and we deepen our social connections and enhance our interactions and exchanges. And I think this is in part because the imagination gains potency by being grounded in nature. But this isn't so much nature as it's commonly understood. This is a kind of enigmatic nature. The great phenomenologist of perception, Merleau-Ponty, once said, "Nature is an enigmatic object." It's not so much what's in front of us or around us, but it's what bears us. And the relationship of the imagination to nature is like the relationship of mind to body. Its correspondences and signatures have become materials of our artwork. So this idea led us to spend a year traveling around the UK, seeking places where people were living in a way that was reciprocal with the environment, so that the landscape would somehow enhance our experience, and the experiential effects would be really powerful to us. So this is an example of a site we discovered called Camp Bling, which was a protest against a road development over an ancient burial ground. And this site, which had once been subject to massive environmental degradation, was now flourishing with the site and its inhabitants in place. And we witnessed firsthand the kind of experiential effects that a site like this can have. And on this basis, we started thinking about the ways in which this kind of thought could be employed in the creation of artworks. And Joseph Beuys had coined the phrase, "a social organism as a work of art," talking about how art can start to affect the social sphere by affecting the social organism. But for us, in our technological age of bioengineering and virtual reality, we think it's fairly self-evident that human creativity and innovation is able to affect the social organism in this way. Joseph Beuys said, "Every man is an artist," but clearly we're all contributing to the tapestry of our social organism. We contribute through our imagination and ideas. But clearly in this context, there is massive significance to the interfaces that mediate these kinds of relationships. So how can we radicalize this idea? And how can we empower the imagination to the heights of imaginative perception described by Henry Corbin, for example, in an age where its mediation is a commodity of such value? Well, we think it's by returning to the root of the organism itself, which is enigmatic nature. If the social organism is to be a medium of the artist, then for us, for it to have its integrity, it needs to be grounded within this territory. So this is a work of art as an antidote to synthetic environments and mechanic interfaces. So with a group of artists and volunteers, we decided to recreate a tree-dwelling protest site in the centre of London, which was a kind of amazing idea. And we were really surprised to be granted permission to build 2 giant tree houses in the centre of Regent's Park and to open up the site to the public to host events in for 6 weeks. And the results were really staggering to us. We managed to construct these pavilions using no heavy-duty machinery, handballing and hoisting these massive pieces of timber halfway up the tree, barefoot, and balancing on our dodgy scaffolding. And we suspended these things from the crux of the tree's branches. And we engaged lots of individuals and members of the public, many of whom came to the site almost daily. And we hosted 195 events from groups and individuals like the RIBA and the philosopher Theodore Zeldin. We had music, dance, and debate. And the project was incredibly exciting to us, but we wanted to go further into this idea. So we started looking at things like organic geometry and the principles of biophilia, seeking to develop environments or pavilions that might have particular psychological or sociological effects by engaging particular degrees or proportions of life. And for us, understanding the creation of things on the microcosm, as in a pavilion, and the macrocosmic environment is the basis for the projection of the imagination into reality. It's designed to orientate individuals in relation to life. So we started to take these ideas and work with the architect Jerry Tate, who is integral in the Eden project. And we looked into what did and didn't work in our original project. And we looked to nature for solutions. So, for example, we took the idea of the creation of a social hub and looked at shelf mushrooms as structures which could support themselves against the trunk of a tree, but also seemed to offer up a platform which we could scale up to host social activities. And we developed a concept of sculpting timber ribs and then creating a layer of skin to enclose the space and immerse participants. And we ended up creating this kind of 21st century bandstand. And we hope that by enabling people to become saturated in nature in this way, and by tuning these pavilions like a kind of musical instrument, we could produce experiences that are transformative and restorative, and create platforms on which new types of culture might begin to emerge. And at the same time, we became really fascinated in the way that the city was becoming more and more commonly referred to as a type of organism. We've got infographics showing the diversity of ways that the city can be mapped. And it allows us to kind of visualize the multiplicities that make up the city. And this reminded us of Calvino's book, Invisible Cities, which has Marco Polo describe 55 different cities to the Emperor Kublai Khan. And in so doing, he kind of points to the multiplicity of cities that occupies our imaginations. But each of these cities is really one, a singular body or organism, but is only singular in the sense that it's comprised of a multitude of individuals and imaginations. So the city is this kind of tapestry of networks and competing ideas. And as a social organism, it can therefore be operated on by using interfaces to mediate these ideas or structure these networks. So we wanted to become participants in the composition of the city. And we wanted to do this by radicalizing the imagination and developing an experiential understanding of the ways in which it's mediated. And our way of doing this was to tap into nature in the heart of the city by conceiving of a kind of talismanic microcosm called the Invisible City. And this project, which aims to use biophilic pavilions to host curated social and cultural activities, is really an experiment. It's a kind of alchemical mixing pot that we hope will enhance the imaginations of its participants by being plugged into the natural environment. But it's also a call to action, to get involved by contributing your ideas. We're all participants in the composition of our society, but so often our roles are mediated. So here's an idea to go back to the source, to engage with the mundus imaginalis, to burst the seams of virtual worlds and manifest ideas, to occupy the invisible. So in our reappropriation of the idea of a social organism as a work of art, we now have the opportunity to invite people to become citizens. Join us as we create a kind of invisible college, an organic network of collaborators occupying this space and generating new culture through the commingling activities of artists, academics, and individuals taking a fresh look at the city of the future from the border of nature.